What are they titled? Like, why do you think they're doing so well?
My dad is still pissed that my mom has the highest ranking one, and it's called How to Be Social IRL in Real Life.
That's sweet. That's definitely a searchable term too.
But
People
do you know what's so funny? And the best part about that, she talks about like how she hosted like football players over to the house every week, and being just a coach's wife, how she had to be social.
Yeah,
She didn't want to be.
kind of forced into it.
And she talks
Which
about,
that's surprising me. Meeting your mom, I would not expect she wasn't a social person.
well, after being social at work all day.
Gotcha.
And then like having to come host like 90
It's a
football
lot.
players at the house.
Yeah.
And like trying to do other things, and then host tailgates on the weekends. It was a job for her to like be a coach's wife, so she felt like she never had time off. So it was a good episode, just how to be social in real life, because she was good at that. But she talks about her party mix that she made. It was like easy, everybody liked it.
What was it? Food or drink?
It's just like M&M's, pretzels, cheese, doodad mix, and she like gave the recipe, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll put the recipe in the show notes. And I guess like on the show, I said, if you make this, tag me. I still to this day have random people who listen to this episode that tag me with their party mix. I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. And I send them to my mom. She's like, this is bizarre.
Is this a YouTube video?
No, it's just a
audio.
podcast. Just
podcast,
a.
Which is even cooler, right? So people aren't seeing this. They're not even getting the visual of what it is. They're just listening to it and go, oh, that sounds cool.
No, I had this one woman.
The fact that they tag you, too, it's like...
I guess she found me through like a networking thing, because she was in Winston-Salem.
Yeah.
So we did have like mutual friends, but like I've never met her, didn't know her, and she sent me an Instagram message. She was like, I listened to your podcast, and she said, I made your mom's party mix for my girls trip, and she was like, we loved it.
That's awesome.
It was just funny. Podcasts are funny to me.
Yeah.
Do you like what's promotion look like for the podcast?
I don't like.
I was about to say, I
have
didn't even
zero
know.
strategy for my podcast.
Yeah.
I stopped it for a long time. I have 6 episodes recorded right now that I'm gonna start again. My biggest holdback was I was like, okay, 2024, I'm gonna record all of them on video.
Then what do you
Did
do with
one
the
and
video?
was like, I don't want to do this, and then I just stopped doing it.
Why
altogether.
didn't you want to do it after that? Like, what was the thing after the first time you recorded it? You just like
It was
how it
just
looked?
easier for me to like grab my phone and just get my thoughts out and just record. It was just easier. But I also, my podcast editor left. She was doing all the editing.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it.
It's a whole different job, and I think it's a different part of your brain. Like that's why it was great partnering with Javier, because he was in. I got introduced to Javier. I don't know, 2 months ago now. Yeah, 2 months ago, and we got connected through Cole actually, which I need to talk to you about some stuff. And Cole was like, I think you should meet him. We sit down. He was telling me what he's doing. I was like, oh, that's really cool. We're just kind of talking. It was really just like meet and greet, and then we connected again, and we're like, dude, this could work. Like now we have someone that can run this stuff, understand it, because you can't do all this at once. Like that's, I think the thing for you and I is like, we really started to take this seriously when Javier got on board, because we're like, cool, now we don't have to worry about the mic's not working, or because there's so many times we shot just different content. It's like, oh, the audio wasn't on.
Or
Well, that's the thing.
we're recording audio.
My,
Yeah,
well,
or
and
we were
that's the
recording
thing.
audio.
My YouTube strategy is very different from my podcast strategy.
Yeah.
The audience is different for me. Like I said, my podcast, and I like it, want to regrow it again for it to be more personal.
Yeah.
My original thought process for starting the podcast was to interview my mom and dad. So they're in their 70s. I was like, I want to have a memory of them.
It's more
like,
just like for you
conversation.
thing, yeah.
Like for my niece and nephews when they grow up, like hear them talk. So that was literal original mindset, and just I was frustrated at the fact that it had been a goal of mine since 2015 and I hadn't done it.
Yeah.
I was like, just do it.
Yeah. But it's hard though.
But now it's good, and it's like rip that Band-Aid.
Mm-hmm.
But it is going to be a strategy 2025, because looking back when I did my audit this year, my best clients that came into my membership and some of the friends that I met this year found me on the podcast.
Really?
3 of them.
What for you? What's the?
Are we recording?
Yeah, we're rolling.
Shoot.
Yeah,
Been
we're
recording.
good. Yeah.
Oh, hi.
So
No,
that's
that's okay. That's why we did.
That's
it
the
this way.
goal, is
I
to
know.
just have it super casual. Obviously, we'll talk business and kind of.
We'll introduce you at some point.
Yeah.
But,
But going back to the podcast, like you said, you did an audit, right? What does that look like, and what is the strategy for the podcast for 2025?
So I've kind of, it ties into a much bigger picture. So I realized this year doing an audit of my full business that I was offering too much and trying to do too much, whether it was just multiple pricing packages, a course. I think with, there's so much digital marketing. I'm an Amazon influencer. I also do brand partnerships. There is just so many pieces of the puzzle that I feel like I was just this year was like, I don't know where to focus because I'm enjoying doing them all. And the one that makes the most money, the social media management, isn't the one that brings me the most joy. So just kind of looking back over this year and 2023, because 2023 was my best year. And I was like, what was I doing differently then? I was doing a podcast. I was getting more people into my membership. And they were the 3 best clients that came from the podcast. And so that's what I had to look at in 2025. So we're simplifying everything where I'm just going to say we offer 2 things, the membership or social media management. Either we teach you how or we do it for you. And so just simplifying, and I can move a lot of the other things that were under the umbrella into the membership. That the affiliate marketing, the brand partnerships, that's all just going to be taught in the membership instead of just having them separate entities. So my strategy for the podcast and YouTube is I have trainings already for the membership. So 12 trainings once a month. And then that's just what I'm going to promote. I'm going to talk about it on the podcast to promote, hey, join the membership, but here's what we're talking about. Here's why I'm talking about it. Here's why I'm teaching it. Has it been requested? Stuff like this. My YouTube videos are going to be a little bit more visual, but everything I'm doing for the podcast and YouTube is going to funnel back to the membership. And so our goal this year, the most I had when I first started my business, we started with a membership. We were about 300 members, which was great. I wasn't charging as much then. It's $37 a month. And it's definitely like it's hot water in, cold water out, just like a lot of lead generation businesses. I've never run ads on it. We're down to about 50 people. Not bad. Still pays some bills, but I took a break from promoting that because I was promoting social media management, the higher ticket item, and got a little money hungry because the money was coming in pretty good, but then realized like my stress life balance not as good. And I had to think what brought me joy. What brings me joy is teaching people and the light bulb moments and really helping small business owners. And I feel like I can help more small business owners in the membership. And I'm getting filled by meeting people. One of my best friends who came from the podcast, she's in Washington State, all across the other side of the country. We talk on the phone about once a week. And she found me through my podcast.
One of your friends.
She's a friend now.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But
This friend
we've
now found me
never
through
met
the
in
podcast.
person.
Yeah.
We FaceTime all the time.
That's awesome.
And then another friend that I met here in Charlotte found me through the podcast. And when we first met for coffee, it was a little awkward because I felt like she knew so much about me.
And you had no idea who
But
she
she
is.
said, I listened to your podcast. But one of the things that related to her, she owns a brick and mortar coffee shop here in Charlotte. On the podcast, she learned that I used to own a brick and mortar store, like a boutique store. And she wanted to ask me questions about that, some of the struggles, some of the obstacles, why I sold that business. And we just connected instantly, but she connected with me first through my podcast. So it's been really cool.
That's cool. How did she find the podcast?
I have no idea.
Because that's always interesting to me, how people stumble across it. Did someone tell somebody? Did they just kind of searching for different podcasts? Because I think everybody's looking for that next good podcast, right?
Right.
I just learned about how...
I think hers was a search because when we talked about it, she said, I was shocked to find out you lived in Charlotte and I wanted to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious to go back through your 6 podcasts. What are the titles? Like, what search them to find the one of 6? Because 6 is not a lot.
No.
And it's not
Oh,
like
I did way more than 6. I have 6 prepared for 2025 already.
Oh.
So
Oh, gotcha.
that's-
So how many? Yeah, how many
I
do
don't
you
know
have
how
total?
many I have right now. I mean, I did it consistently for well over a year. So
Oh, okay.
I have plenty on there.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
The number 1 podcast was my mom's, How to Be Social IRL. Then my dad's was number 2, How to Have a Winning Mindset. And I loved it because he was a football coach and got to talk about, I got to ask him questions that I really always wanted to ask. Like, what were those locker room talks like? Because, at halftime, one of my big questions was when you're down by 50 points, nobody wants to get back out there on the football field and get their ass kicked in front of a bunch of people.
Public
That would be
humiliation.
hard for me. You know it's public humiliation. You're going to lose anyway. What are those conversations like? Because at the time I was like feeling really down with my business. Like we were losing numbers. We were losing clients. I was like talking to my dad, which was a really cool conversation. So highly recommend that podcast episode.
Do you know what episode it is?
Like that a lot.
What episode number it is?
It was number 2, I think.
Number
He was
2.
like my number 2 episode. Because I loved what he said too. It wasn't about motivation. He said, you're not going to motivate a team to go out there and just like play their best to win. He said, and just like in business, it's bite-sized pieces. What can I do better? What can I learn from what I just did wrong? How can we best protect the ball here? What can we just do a little bit better than we did looking at our own self, not the other team? And I thought that was so good in business because I think we compare ourselves a lot to other people, other teams, and we just have to stop. And that's why I liked that podcast episode, because I'm such a sports fan growing up in a sports family. And I think business, you can learn a lot about business through sports. And I thought that conversation with my dad is so special to me because it's truly helped me. And I'm able to send that podcast episode to a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, it's cool because it's your dad, so you get a different side. You see a different thing. But I think to your point is there is such a huge correlation between business and sports with whether it's your mindset of continue. Like, I mean, I think that halftime example is a great example. It's like there's so many times in business that you get your teeth kicked in.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you didn't fail yet, right? You got to keep going out there. You got to keep making money. And, you know, we all get, I think, deterred sometimes. It's like, well, you know, you go deal with 3 clients in a row and you get shut down or something like that. It's tough, you know? And I think, you know, those analogies always sit with me well because of that. I think probably because I'm big into sports. But even people that aren't, I think, could take a lot from that. Is, you know, something that people should listen to more. Yeah.
I think so. It's been great for me.
Yeah.
So I want to circle back to the podcast. I think that's so interesting that, first of all, plug the podcast. What's it called? Like, what's the purpose, if there is one?
There is no purpose. I mean,
Which is crazy to me.
In the past, there has been no purpose, but I'm a recovering perfectionist. And so for me, that's why I sat on it. It was on a goal poster of mine since 2015. And I was so mad at myself in 2021 when I sat there and looked at this and was like, how have I sat on this dream for so long? Because I'm a perfectionist, because I didn't have a strategy, because I didn't have a plan. So what I did instead was say, hey, I'm just going to start one. That's my goal, is just to start one, just to get it going. Funny story, the podcast editor who I had, her name was Mariah. I met her at the Apple store. I was buying a new computer. And her customer service was so good at that day. And I asked her what she did, what she was knowledgeable in. And she said, oh, I'm really into like audio editing and all this stuff. And I kind of joked around with her and said, well, here's my business card. I said, if you ever want to be a podcast editor, I'm looking to start a podcast. I don't think I would have started it without Mariah, because she called me about a year later and said, do you still want to start a podcast? I said, I've always wanted to. I just needed that motivation. And it's funny because when she left me, my podcast quit, and we are trying to start it back up. And it's funny because she reached out to me this week and was like, what, girl, what's been going on? Why have you not been doing this podcast?
Yeah, what happened with her?
A full-time job, just busy, and couldn't devote as much time to it.
Got
it. But there was no strategy at the time, and that was okay for me because it was the one part of my business that was just fun for me.
Yeah.
But I had to have that mindset of, I don't care if this is perfect. I don't care if it's bad. We're just going to get it out there. At one point, I will strategize. At one point, we will make this how I want it, but let me just get it started. And what I've learned is people love that, because I've said that on the podcast episode several times. Like, hey, this isn't going to be a weekly podcast. It started out weekly, and then we stopped, and I was like, well, it's not weekly anymore, guys. You know, who knows when you're going to get another one. And I've had 3 or 4 people come up to me this year and say, we're really ready for your podcast again. And they're friends of mine too, which was also interesting to me that my friends listen to my podcast, because admittedly, I have friends who do podcasts that I don't listen to. But they're not really talking about subjects that I want to know about. Like, I'm not going through a divorce, so my friend has a divorce podcast. I don't really need to listen to that. Hopefully I never have to, but I know who to refer, how to refer her. But I was able to ask my friends why they like the podcast, and it's that behind-the-scenes look of what's going on, the thought process. They know that I stay up to date with marketing and social media, so I do talk about that a lot, and just the vulnerability of financials. I've always on my podcast been very open about how much money I'm making, how much money I'm losing, how much my expenses are, and that's been a lot of feedback that I've gotten from entrepreneurs is, holy crap, we like how honest you are about the money side of things. And I'm not a financial podcast person, but I just tell people I'm an entrepreneur who's growing, and you can grow with me and learn with me.
As you said that, I remember I used to listen to Smart Passive Income, Pat Flynn. I don't know if that rings a bell. Big podcast guy.
You
entrepreneur.
are, or Pat guys?
He is. Well, he still is, but he's ventured into some other stuff. He used to share a weekly blog about breaking down his financials, what he spent, what he made, and this is when he was like nobody. It was just really cool to see, because I'm like, whoa, you lost $5,000 this month? Like,
Right.
how hard was that to write that email and put it on paper and send it to who knows how many people?
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. It's the authenticity, right? It's the rawness of like who you are. People can relate. Like everybody, I'm sure you see nowadays on social media, it's all like, I am perfect, I am great. It's a highlight reel. That's not real life.
Yep.
It's not. And honestly, I think that's how my social media grew in the first place. Because most people know this, I was in a beauty and skincare industry before, like a network marketing thing, and really just in the bubble of like how things were done. And I'm very much, you tell me to do something, I don't want to do it. I want to do it different and better. And that's just my brain, and that's not been always great in a career. But I remember showing up without makeup on and just talking, and one of the mentors saying, hey, you're never going to sell makeup if you don't wear makeup on camera. But I was like, I'm actually selling more, and was good in sales. This diamond ring that I'm wearing was from selling, and did really well with the company, but doing things differently than other people did, showing up authentically. Fast forward to this year, I haven't been with that business in a long time, but this year I had a speaking event at the Dunhill Hotel uptown. Love that hotel. Would love to get y'all as a client. Shout out. But had a great speaking event there. And at the end, Q&As, this woman stood up and she said, I don't have a question. She said, but I just want to state, a lot of y'all have talked about showing up authentically as yourself. She said, I've been following Stetson for 12 plus years on social media, and she's been doing that from the beginning. And she said she hasn't changed who she is. And I think that's the most important thing. My brand has changed. My business has changed. My color patterns have changed. But how I show up has not changed.
We're fine.
You hungry?
No, I don't know why. It must be all this coffee. I'm like, what? I'm like hearing myself.
Are we going to get tacos after this?
Yeah, maybe.
Paul's stomach's growling for people watching. I don't know if,
Yeah.
if the
That's
mic
funny.
picked
Don't
them
even
up.
know why.
I'm sure the mic
I'm hearing
picked
it.
it
It's
up.
loud
That
in my
was
ear.
pretty
over
loud.
here. Yeah.
I'm
You
just
guys can
trying
hear
to
that, right?
stop
I was like, what
Yeah.
is going on? Like, I swear I'm not pregnant. Anyways.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah.
I think now more than ever, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. It's the less edited content performs the best in 2024 going into 2025, and I think it's because of that. It's people realize the over produced, over jump cut, like over edited, versus just like picking up your phone and selfie video. Hey, I'm at this client. We're doing this, and this. I had written down earlier something you said earlier. Make content creation easy. Like we overthink.
Yes.
Oh, this podcast has to be perfect, and the video and the lighting, and we're sitting in a great studio. Thank you, Javier. Shout out.
Yes.
We thought the same thing of like we want to do a podcast, but we were doing the same thing. We're like, I don't know enough about cameras and lighting, but I don't know recording and post production. Just sounds daunting, so we just didn't do anything.
Right.
I think the key here for me is make it easy. Make it like super simple. How can you simplify this content creation process? And I know you do a lot of social media and you're great at it. Plug your social media for everybody listening.
My personal one is Stetson, K Patton. Stetson like the hat, Patton like the general. The business one is Socially Stetson, but you can find me on either.
Sweet.
Stetson K Patton's the personal one. That's where you'll find me on every platform.
Yeah. So I'm curious to hear I'm sure you have a process with how to create content, the easiest, best way. Like for the listeners here that maybe want to do a podcast or want to be more present on social media in the creation phase, like what would you tell that person? Like where to start? How do you keep it super simple?
That's not a cookie cutter answer because it really depends on people's goals and what social media platform they're on. So there's going to be a different system. There's going to be a different content creation piece if you're doing it for Instagram over Facebook. It's going to be different on YouTube over TikTok. So I would have to talk more to people to find that out. And that's why I think talking to people, there are so many people who don't want to show up on camera.
Yeah.
Well, then that's a different content creation process.
Yep.
There are people who want to be on camera, but they think they need to be funny. Or, sometimes that can be really cringe when people are just trying to do what's trendy. And there's ways to do it to still show who you are. I think the trends are also changing. And so that's what I would tell people. If you right now you feel like you have to hop on a trend because you just see people doing it, just know that that's going to go away. And it's almost like generational too. So the younger generation always wants to do something opposite of what their parents did. Right now we're seeing that the younger generation doesn't even want to be on social media. They don't want it. It's not cool to be on social media because their family is, their parents
That's
are.
crazy to
the
think.
older kids are.
Because there's a whole generation where they're all on.
They're all on
lives,
social
there's
media.
streaming. Like streaming's
All
huge.
the 5 years ago, all
Yeah.
the teenagers that we were watching dance on TikTok through the pandemic, they're all grown and have jobs right now.
But a lot of them, some of them transition. It's interesting to see some of these people doing the dances. There's one guy that I've seen. He's now a country singer, and it's like interesting how they've changed what they've went about with that.
But also interesting that you know that about
yeah,
this guy,
the
right?
fact that I know
about
that
this
worries
life.
me also.
And so the younger generation who are like 9 and 10 years old watching all that, watching their parents watch that, watching their older siblings watch that, it's not cool to them. So as a social media manager and strategist, I'm thinking, okay, well, what does the future of social media look like if right now in Australia just banned anybody under the age of 16 to be on social media?
Any
Do y'all know
social
that?
media platform.
Any social
Does that
media.
include YouTube too?
I'm not sure.
Because I always wondered if they consider YouTube an actual social media platform or not. You know, I mean, I do,
but I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
I know for Facebook and Instagram,
Yep.
That's
Meta,
interesting.
TikTok,
I'm just thinking, how do they govern it? Because you just lie about
they're
your
making.
age.
They could lie about their age, but they're making it harder for
Yeah.
people to lie about
Yeah,
their age
I-
with facial recognition, stuff like
that's
that.
awesome.
So
Yeah.
I think it's great because
Yeah.
they've just seen the studies of the mental health on the younger generation, also the older generation, and how addicted we are to our phones. It's awful, but I think that's great because these younger kids don't want it. It's not cool to them. Right now, it's all the retro stuff. So I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I thought Polaroid cameras were cool growing up because that was retro. It was vintage. Right now, the kids think not taking pictures on their phone are cool. They like the disposable cameras.
the film
and
cameras and stuff like that.
getting the experience of nostalgia.
Yeah.
Social media is not nostalgic for them. It's something new. It's something boring for them. It's old news to them, and it's not cool. So what does that look like 10 years from now? What are things going to look like? I think those personal connections, getting people in person, is going to be huge event-wise, but also that personal branding again, because people are still going to connect with you as a person. And that can still come across as social media, because when these kids do graduate and get to college and get jobs, social media is not going anywhere. It's still going to be here. I feel like millennials are actually in the prime spot because our baby boomer parents need to learn social media. A lot of Gen X is still figuring it out. Millennials, we got it right in the cusp of high school and college. We were
were there when
immersed into
Facebook
social
started,
media.
you know?
I remember when it
MySpace.
was the Facebook.
I remember
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And-
And it was only certain colleges that had it.
Right. And we
Yep.
have those memories of watching, like, it was the millennials who invented social media. So we have it. And then, so we're in a great prime space for the education, the knowledge based industry of social media, because now the younger kids, and I'm learning this just trying to work with some content creators, they don't really get it either because they weren't allowed to have it. So all these businesses who want to hire young kids to do their social media, they're not really the best fit. Millennials actually are your
Yeah.
best fit for the social media part of it.
Well, we got to see both sides of it. We got to see it without and with it. And I think we're in that age group, right? That millennial group we understand how things can go out of fashion really quickly because we've seen, I think about, we are like the first generation that had computers, cell phones, all these things. We've gotten to see this gamut of stuff where the kids born now, they don't know what it's not to have a cell phone.
Right.
We were just talking about flip phones earlier.
I
It's
want
like,
one.
and they probably think those are super cool. And like when we had them, we're like, yeah, they're really cool. And then we got the Razor, right?
Well, that's another thing I think about too. I actually think about my grandparent. My grandmother is still alive, and everything I mean, she saw the invention of television
Mm-hmm.
and the phones and all of the things that she has seen, maybe doesn't understand, but she gets to FaceTime her grandkids. And I think it's really interesting how we take for granted some of this technology, but we right now, because of AI, are about to see a much larger scale. So I think about my grandmother who saw telephones and TV, indoor plumbing, you know, all the things come to life in her generation of almost 100 years. These next 100 years are about to be insane with AI technology. But again, going back to what Caleb and I were talking about being authentic and people liking that raw, unedited footage, that's why I think the biggest currency you can own right now in the digital world is being authentic. Not creating those AI generated avatars and voice. Are those efficient and great? Absolutely. But people are going to want to know, like, and trust you. That's always been a thing. People want to know, like, and trust you. What's going to happen with the rise of AI is people aren't going to know what to trust because they're not going to know, is it you? These AI characters look so much like them with the deep fake voices, the deep fake faces and videos. And there are trainings right now, even the FBI people can't figure out. Like, it's hard to figure out what's real and fake. And there are classes and trainings on it. And so those real life connections, those in-person connections, and that trust factor, if people can trust you, that's going to be the biggest currency you own. So how do you get that message across on social media? And it's not having so much editing. So people just know.
Well, I think to your point too, and showing up authentic, some people, like we've talked about this a lot, they want to script videos or they want to be perfect. And it's like, do you talk to your clients that way? When you're talking to these people, how are you talking? Talk
Right.
that way. And I think that's, well, no, I want to come off this way. It's like, yeah, but these are the conversations. This is why people like you. This is like why they want to work with you, because of that one-on-one personal talk. And that's what I think some people miss with it, is like they're trying to be so overproduced, like you said, with the cuts and all this stuff. It's like, no, just make a video. I made one yesterday about a dog.
Right.
We're working on that whole situation. But, you know, I got a lot of, that was based on like people reached out because of like the dog situation, but I just turned it on. I was like, I need to get this out there. Let me just post about it. I didn't script that at all, you know? I think that's what more people need to do. And we always talk to people about this when we work with them on for the media side, is shoot 100 videos. Like, you don't have to post these. Just get comfortable of like pretending the camera is the person you're talking to. You know?
Question for y'all, because I know y'all are in the same industry as I am too and doing this. This was something that I ran into this year. First time, I've been on social media for a long time. This was the first year that I ran into, I don't want to show up. I don't want anybody to see. I felt for the first time in my life too overexposed, where people knew too much about me. They know too much about what's going on in my life. And I did not like that feeling. And I've had people tell me that before and I didn't get it. This year I got it. Have y'all ever experienced that? Like, what has that been like for y'all of overcoming that and still showing up on camera? Because I feel like y'all both show up well.
Yeah, I think, well, at least for me, I can speak on my side, is I burnt myself out with it. Like, I was, before the career I'm in currently, I was in insurance. Like, you don't post about insurance, you don't talk about it, because there's a lot of things, like you said the wrong thing. So when I got into real estate, when I started posting about it, I didn't know how to show up authentically, and then I figured it out, and then I think what it is, I was just putting too much out there, and I didn't keep enough to myself. And that's like the advice I would give to someone. It's like, you can easily burn yourself out, especially if you don't have the right processes, but you don't have to share everything with everybody. There's a level of authenticity that people need to know, is like, you can still be authentic and not share every detail, because there's stuff that's personal to your life that keep it in house. You know, like if there's something wrong with your marriage, you do not need to post that and feel like, oh, well, I just make my marriage sound great, but there's really issues. It's like, well, still don't have to share that, because there's another thing that I've realized about social media is you're going to get unwanted opinions no matter what. So if you don't want those, it's okay. You don't have to be authentic, and take a break from social media. It's okay, because I think that's also another part of being authentic, is letting people know, it's like, hey, I haven't been on for a month. I don't know if anybody's noticed. Not that you should, like, right? But I did this because of this, and I think that really resonates well, because people are like, oh, it's okay. Like, or, you know, the other thing you could do is you can, create a Rolodex of videos. So when you're not wanting to show up, I think we've talked about this with B-roll. B-roll is a great way to do that. Set it up and just do work.
Well, and that's what I used to teach people, just have the B-roll content and you can do it. I have tons of B-roll content that I could have posted. I always find myself like hating social media. I didn't want to post it all. I was like, I don't even want people to know who I am. Like it was that
Was it something
much.
that caused that, or
Probably. I think because this is me being very vulnerable right now. Sorry, Javier, you're going to have to edit that out.
It's all right. He's got to edit out the rumbles in my stomach still. So
Okay, for me, so I was single and online dating. I'm not on the apps anymore. But
that's painful. In
a
itself.
lot of tell me about it. But it doesn't have to be. Dating can be fun. I met some great people. But I think a lot of it was fear-based for me. I listened to too much true crime podcasts, and I was getting fearful of posting. I also did a lot of research this year on online predators, and I've been speaking openly at foster care homes about how to watch out for sex trafficking, how to look out for this. And I think I went into a really, really dark place on the evil side of social media and how much bad shit happens. And it got me in a dark place where I was like, I don't want to teach people how to be on here. I don't think people should be on here. Like, go save your children. And it got me in a really dark place. But then I caught myself crying. And my dad said, well, Stetson, at least you know that you still care and you have a heart because you are crying about this. Like, you're impacted by it. And he said, but what can you do to change it? And I said, I do have to teach people to be safe. And that's why I do offer a free training class called How to Look Out for AI Online Predators, how to look out for the deep fakes, what to do for safety-wise. I really am passionate about keeping the kids off of social media as long as you can. But when they get on there, because they are, and they're going to sneak and get on there anyway at a friend's house, they just are, they need to be prepared. So it's also what can they look out for and what are some things they can be prepared for, having that emergency safe word with your family. Like if you do get a phone call saying, hey, I'm in trouble, you know, all the things. So I know that I quit listening to true crime podcast this year. That is something I didn't because for my mental health, and I know I used to love them, but I think just being single, going out on dates, I was like literally getting scared of men. Like, oh, is he going to stalk me back home? Did he look at my Instagram and figure out where I live? And these just intrusive thoughts were going through my head where it was like really holding me back. And then I had to get over myself because I am single and do pay all my bills, and Instagram does pay my bills. So I had to show up, but I could see the dip financially of me not showing up on social media. I also didn't like that. So that is why for 2025, we're putting more of the focus on the podcast because it's just audio. And if I want to not show up, I do feel like the podcast is something where I can just record in the car and I don't have to feel so seen. I don't mind being
you're just heard. Yeah.
Well, and then they can do it any place, right? They could be on a plane or wherever, you know, and just listen to it, go for a walk.
It just felt more comfortable to me. Yeah. And granted, I've always felt comfortable on camera. I've never minded showing up. I grew up in musical theater, so people ask, why do you feel so comfortable on camera? I grew up in musical theater, so that part comes natural to me. And I know it doesn't come natural to most people, but I say that because I totally related to people this year on, this is hard. I don't want to do this.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like, it's easy when you're motivated to do it. But when you're not, it feels like you're trying to push
torture
a 10,000-pound boulder up a hill, right? And you're alone. It's tough. I mean, we've talked about this because we shoot together, and sometimes we're both like, I don't want to be on camera today.
And I agree. Taking that break, I did take a break and did not feel guilty about it.
You shouldn't.
Did not.
No.
I used to tell people, like I said, to do the B-roll, show up, be consistent. Nope, just take the break. It doesn't matter. Now, when it started taking a dip in my finances because I had taken 2 months off, I was like, yeah, we need to do something about that. But I'm fortunate that I have a team. They did some posts for me. I was able to send them some B-roll. So a lot of the posts this year weren't mine. I'm finally back in that creative space where I'm doing my stuff again, and it feels fun again.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on when people do take breaks? Like, should they announce it to their followers and people that are following, or just do it? You know, because I know I see some people do it, and I always think about that as like, okay, I'm not that person, so I'm not going to tell you. I'm just doing it because I'm going to do it. But what do you know, like, what's your thoughts on that?
I think most people don't notice.
Yep.
Most people aren't thinking about you. They're thinking about them. I think it's okay to share why you took a break. That's the important part, the why. Like,
so you're saying do it after, when you come back. Be like, hey, I don't know if you noticed, haven't been on here, and here's why.
Yeah, I don't even think you need to say, I haven't been on, but you can say, I took 2 weeks off because I wanted to focus on mental health. And I went to Italy in a villa. That would be my dream.
Yeah.
Let's do that. But just saying, I took a break because of this, because I wanted to spend more time with my family and be intentional, because I think that shows the human side of you on like why you're taking a break.
Yeah.
And it also lets people, I think it is a good reminder for people to get off their phone. So I have timers set on my computer and my phone late. It's 11 p.m. on my computer. But I catch myself, and I give myself grace because I don't have a family, I don't have kids, so it is just me. I don't mind working from my computer while I sit and watch Netflix. It doesn't bother me. But 11 o'clock is my shut off time, and I have it set where my whole computer and phone just like goes off at 11 p.m. And so I'm like, okay, great. And I will see that clock 10:55 if I'm working on an email or I'm doing something. I need those dopamine detoxes from work, from phones. And I think that's going to be a corporate trend moving forward as well.
I think you're starting to see that, and I think part of that too is, like, to your point about your intern, is feeling seen, feeling heard, and not feeling judged. And I think those three things I think about a guy perspective, like if we said that, like I'm gonna take a mental health day, how many people are gonna look at me as a guy and be like, seriously? Just
Right.
just get through it. And now I think I'm gonna talk out both sides of my mouth with this. I do believe in the mental health stuff very strongly. I think there's also a point where you have to be resilient, but there's points you have to understand, like, okay, I think knowing yourself is a huge thing. Like, what is triggering me? And like, her understanding, like, this is not good. Like, I can push through a lot of things, but nope, barrier break.
True crime.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Understanding
It
that.
was triggering.
And I think that's something, just being well aware of, like, therapy has come up a lot recently, right, over the past few years. Big people, if you talked about this 10 years ago, people are like, you go to therapy? What's wrong with you? It's like, nothing. Well, a lot probably, but also, figuring out, like, it's okay to have these feelings and talk about it and understand it, but understand where it's coming from too, and how to not get to that point. When I used to work in my corporate job, I used to teach a lot of people because I had anger issues when I was younger, but understanding what gets your blood boiling, and the source of a lot of stuff, and how you stop it. Like, okay, I'm feeling that. Okay, how do I take myself out of this situation? And maybe it is a mental health day. Maybe it's not having 4 coffees today like I've had.
I've had too.
I love it though. I love it. I'm honestly.
Well, and I think I had to catch myself of like really being triggered. I was like,
Yeah.
wait, why am I triggered? I was like, are you kidding me? Like, that was my first reaction. I didn't say that out loud, but I had to catch myself and be like, well, why did that trigger me? Well, because I didn't have that. I didn't have that opportunity. And I do think we need to be tough and resilient. And I do think the younger generation needs to toughen up a little bit. But it's so funny. I don't know if y'all watch, is it the School of Hard Knocks, where he interviews like millionaires? Do you know Javier when he?
School of Greatness.
Is it School of Greatness?
Who is
Something Hard Knocks.
is it Lewis?
He
what's he
just
look
he
like?
goes
Something
he'll like, excuse me sir, how much money do you make?
Oh, the guy in the street.
Yes.
Yeah,
And he
what
goes
did
up
you
to
do?
like all these
Yeah,
millionaires
he's really
and
good,
stuff like
yeah.
that.
He started doing YouTube. I didn't know that.
I have a Facebook badge as being one of their top fans, so shout out. But it's because I binge watch millionaires. Like, I want to know the mindset of millionaires. But it's funny because he always asks the like Gen X, baby boomer generation. He goes, who do you think works harder, Gen Z or your generation? They all say we work harder and blah, blah, blah. And that triggers me too, because I'm sitting there looking at this Gen Z kid, interviewing them, who has built $1 million business. And I'm like, I don't think that they worked harder. It's just a different type of work.
Yeah.
And so I think the older generation needs to realize it's not that the younger generation doesn't work as hard. They are just working differently and more efficiently, but like, it is harder now sometimes to be heard and seen in that digital space, because I feel bad for him every time he asks that question. They're like, oh, us, hands down, we worked harder. No, you just work differently, because editing videos, sitting there for hours, it can be tedious and hard and mentally draining.
Yeah. Well, I think part of that too is it's a different type of hard. Right? I was watching this Denzel thing. He was actually talking about this the other day. But like what that gentleman says, like, oh, well, we have it harder. It's like, well, because you didn't have access to YouTube, and like for us to learn things is a lot easier, right? So we can accelerate whatever we're doing a lot faster. But also, boomers didn't have the constant feedback that you get from all of these sides. You're getting everybody's opinion, and you're trying to sift through that. And I think that's where they don't understand. It's like, that is hard in itself. for to post a video and then people rip you apart and then go post another video, right? That is hard. And if people don't understand that, then they need to just go post some videos and understand that.
They
But I think
will
it's a
it.
different, I think it's, if both of them are hard, it just depends what was the hard, right? And we get the luck of kind of being in the middle, I guess. I don't know if that's good or bad. You know, we knew it was like without YouTube and having to learn stuff and like find that one person that could help you rather than going on YouTube and go, how to do this,
Right.
right? So I think it's just, it's with sports too. Like so I watch a lot of basketball. Whenever you ask a basketball player, whatever generation, well, which one was the toughest generation? Oh, my generation. It's like, well, you didn't play any other ones too.
Right.
So it's also understanding that too. So.
I think it's cool. Millennials get hated on. I think you're right. We are in such a cool spot right now because of what we did grow up with. I really feel fortunate to be a millennial right now because I like the space that I'm in where I'm getting to educate some of the older generation and the younger generation. But also, I used to be a casino travel host, and the older generation, I really learned a lot from them. I mean, when I worked there at the casinos, it was average age demographic of like 85. And again, kind of like asking them how they made their money, why they're wasting their money, not wasting, you know, it can be fun.
Subjective.
But they're still my client. So yes, go gamble. And here's the thing, I realized I am a morning person.
Yeah.
So I like waking up early, but I like doing all the me stuff in the morning. I love meeting friends for coffee in the morning. I love going to the gym and working out. I love like cleaning my place, doing laundry, getting a lot of the me stuff done, because for me, starting my work day in the afternoon felt better knowing that I had a lot of the other stuff done. And just getting out of the head of what everybody else is telling you to do as an entrepreneur world, figuring out what works for you. So then I don't feel bad working at an email at 10 o'clock at night because I didn't start work till 2 p.m.
And you filled up your cup in the morning. And I think you hit on a great point. Is like, I'm a big morning person. I'm a big morning routine person. But I've fell in that trap where I've beat myself up. Like, oh, you didn't do this right away. You're not doing this. You're not productive. And like, I don't even have to be on social media to do that to myself. You know, like, so these intrusive thoughts, I think that's a great thing to mention about this is figure out what works best for you, whether you're a morning person or a night person. I also think about, we were talking about creativity with Casey earlier. Figure out when you're the most creative, and that's when you should work on stuff and block schedule things together. Like, try not to go from one task of being creative to like an admin task. Because we all know that is not an easy shift, whether you're like, oh, that's easy enough. It's like, it's not, because you're not going to put your best work out there.
Right.
You know, so figure out what works best for you.
I think it boils down to being like self-aware and knowing what works for you. Yeah. Like, I tried so long to be a morning person, and that's just not me.
Right.
Like, some of my best work happens at 9 o'clock, where I'm like, oh crap, I got to do this right now. Like, there's no emails coming in. I've always been a night person. There was a couple years where I'm like, got to get up, super early workout. When it happens, great. I always feel great during those days. But most of the time, it's like not working out in the morning. I'm chilling. I have a late morning. I'll eat a little bit, drink some coffee, and then get into work at 8:39. Like, which is
still early, just so you know. Like, that's actually still early. Like, that's not. I mean, late to your standards.
But also, read these books, and you're like, got to get up 6 a.m. workout done by 7:30.
I've read books that's like, got to get up at 3 a.m. and do all this stuff. Be at the gym by 4. Or you did a 2-hour workout, sauna. And listen, I'm all for whatever works best for you. But again, it's finding out what works best for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And not feeling guilt and shame about it. So that's something I've worked on a lot this year, just in therapy, and having guilt and shame around finances, success, defining what success looks like for me, and work-wise. I truly was putting so much financial stress and goals on myself, and 2024 did not look as good as 2023. But talking to a lot of business owners this year, it was the same. Their 2024 sucked compared to 2023. So then it was like, okay, well, how can I give myself grace? How can we make this better? What do I want? What are my goals like? And we have a mutual friend, Jamie. I was talking to her last night. I was like, yeah, we probably need to goal plan. She said, do you know what my one goal is for 2025? I was like, what? And she said, to not set any goals. She said, it'll be my first time.
That's crazy
to hear from her.
Saying that because she's a big goal person.
She's such a goal-oriented person. And I was like, she's the perfect person to ask this question. But it felt so relaxing to hear that come out of her mouth. And I know that that's the right thing for her. Is, hey, I don't want to put that mental stress on myself to even have a goal this year. Let me just enjoy life. she's in a good space where she can do that. Where I feel like for me, again, going back to the podcast, just not having a strategy, I'm like, okay, well, let's just put a mini goal in place. Let's just put the mini goal. My goal right now for the podcast is once a month and promote the membership. That's it. Instead of once a week. I'm not going to put the pressure of having a video with it, for it to be perfect, for it to be edited. I'm not going to worry about intro and outro music. It is just once a month, and it's a commercial. Because I'm so sick and tired of hearing all these other podcasts that are subpar, and they're still making 6 figures from it. And I still listen to them because they're good content. And that's what matters. The knowledge-based industry is going to grow.
Oh, I think so much it's going to grow. Because to your point about AI, we were just talking about ChatGPT and researching. You can research stuff on ChatGPT and get it. And obviously it's going to get better, but I really don't think it's ever going to take out that human piece of, you can only input so much into ChatGPT or AI stuff. It's getting, going back to authenticity and things like that. I don't think we're ever going to lose that. It's just, what does it look like?
Right. I think another thing that's going to be big in 2025 that I hope are dopamine detoxes. And I think a lot of people who are holding classes or spaces for people to dopamine detox will be big. I've learned more about dopamine hits this year, even being on the dating apps. I caught myself. We know people are addicted to social media. We know people are addicted to like Candy Crush and phone games. I caught myself just bored, going to sit and watch TV, and was like, let me open my phone and get on a dating app. I seriously thought to myself, oh my God, are you treating this like Candy Crush? Like, are you treating this like just a swipe left, swipe right? And I caught myself in that moment, like, what is my intention on being on this dating app? And am I treating it like that? Or am I just getting on there to fill a void or boredom like some people are with social media, which I really had a good boundary of not doing that with social media because I'm intentional about my social media time. But then when I caught myself doing that on a dating app, I was like, girl, get off. Because I knew that if I caught myself doing that, 90% of the people on there are unaware that they're doing that. And they're just filling a void of being lonely or just killing time. And it's the dopamine hit of getting a match. And that's they're built to do that. And so now we've seen, even in Charlotte, Paul and I have talked about this, some of these singles events where people are meeting in person again and people are holding these events. And it's those dopamine detoxes. And I think people need to realize, what is a dopamine hit? What is giving me those dopamine hits? It could be alcohol. It could be social media. But how can you regulate those dopamine hits to regulate your nervous system? And that has helped me so much figure out what's important to me moving forward. Who fills my cup? You guys fill my cup. I love going to coffee with you guys. I mean, truly, because we do get to talk about...
Luke.
And
Our
meet
boy
Luke
Luke
Kuechly.
Kuechly.
Yeah, shout out Luke Kuechly.
Shout out Luke Kuechly.
How funny would it be if you listen to this episode? He's like, I remember those people.
Oh, Luke Kuechly, if you're listening, I'm the girl at the coffee shop. Call me. So, still single, by the way. And you won't find me on the apps, but on the podcast.
One thing that's helped me is turning off the color, the grayscale.
Yes.
You can hit the power button 3 times.
Oh, really?
I heard a stat. It was like, it's like 30% of your.
I didn't do the right button.
It's like 30% immediately just turning on grayscale on your phone.
It helps so much.
Decrease in screen time.
I can see that because you're less stimulated.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's less
You
sprite
get on
objects,
social
right?
media and
Shiny
you're like,
stuff.
this is
it's dull.
boring.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
it's not as
yeah.
fun. It's like a newspaper version of social media. And there's dopamine. I just spent this Thanksgiving in a casino, and I was watching people in the slot machines and all the things. Everything is designed for those dopamine hits. And when you study addiction and things, our generation, like these millennials growing up with the social media, we have gotten so used to the quick fixes, the dopamine hits. No matter what kind of substance it is, it could be a person, it could be a relationship that's giving you that dopamine hit. One of my clients is a relationship coach, and I've learned so much through doing her social media and relationship coaching of some people just stay in these toxic relationships because it's the dopamine hit of not knowing what's going to happen. So they don't know how to regulate their nervous system. It's the dopamine hit on social media, that hook, that expectation. That's a dopamine hit. So as a marketing person, I understand that, and I love the marketing side of it. But I also think the population as a whole really needs to dopamine detox. And I am pushing that and really talking more about that on my podcast and in my membership. My team, we have a Slack channel where we communicate, and we have one for mental health check-ins. And so we talk a lot about grounding. We talk a lot about getting off of your phone for the holidays. We try to say, hey, Fridays, don't be working with clients. We try to have a lot of mental health check-ins. And this is funny. My Gen Zer, my intern, I don't think she would mind me saying this, but
Hopefully not.
it was interesting to me. I'll ask her, and if she does, we'll edit it out. Thanks. But she had called me and said, hey, do you mind if I take a mental health day today? She said, I'm not going to be able to get any of my work done today. She said, I'm just really anxious today, and I don't think I can get my work done. I remember my first initial reaction was like, are you kidding me right now? Like, I wish I would have got mental health days at work. Like, I was having to pretend that I was sick and call in sick.
Yeah.
But then I caught myself thinking that, saying, I wish I could have done that at my corporate job or my job. And I will never forget, like, one of my first jobs, sorry, lying to say that I was sick so I could go to Miami.
Hey, it's
But
mental health day.
It worked. It was a mental health day. But how cool would it be to be honest and open with somebody and your employers and your bosses to say, hey, I'm feeling really anxious today. I'm having a lot of anxiety. I don't know how I'm going to get my work done. Like, I need to take the day. I knew, like, I sat there and thought about it in the moment. I was like, oh, these Gen Z kids, like, all this mental health talk. But at the same time, she's not going to produce great quality for my clients if she doesn't want to work, and I make her work. And so it's funny. I was like, absolutely, I'll help you get the work done. We'll get it done. She was so thankful after that and said, I am so thankful that you prioritize mental health. That's so important to me. And her loyalty and quality of content just got better after that. So I do think some of these corporations, businesses, really need to look at Gen Z, how they've grown up. They have struggled with mental health because of social media and because of what's happening on the online world. They struggle with it a lot more than we did. And they are going to be asking for those mental health days. They're going to need those dopamine detoxes from work, from phones. And I think that's going to be a corporate trend moving forward as well.
I think you're starting to see that. And I think part of that, too, is, like, to your point about your intern, is feeling seen, feeling heard, and not feeling judged. And I think those three things I think about in guy perspective. Like, if we said that, like, I'm going to take a mental health day, how many people are going to look at me as a guy and be like, seriously? Just, just get through it. And now I think I'm going to talk out both sides of my mouth with this. I do believe in the mental health stuff very strongly. I think there's also a point where you have to be resilient, but there's points you have to understand. Like, okay, I think knowing yourself is a huge thing. Like, what is triggering me? And, like, her understanding, like, this is not good. Like, I can push through a lot of things, but barrier break.
True crime.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Understanding that.
It was triggering.
And I think that's something, just being well aware of it. Like, therapy has come up a lot recently, right, over the past few years. Big people, but if you talked about this 10 years ago, people are like, you go to therapy? What's wrong with you? It's like, nothing. Well, a lot, probably. But also, figuring out, like, it's okay to have these feelings and talk about it and understand it, but understand where it's coming from, too. And how to not get to that point. When I used to work in my corporate job, I used to teach a lot of people because I feel like I had anger issues when I was younger, but understanding what gets your blood boiling, and this works with a lot of stuff, and how you stop it. Like, okay, I'm feeling that. Okay, how do I take myself out of this situation? And maybe it is a mental health day. Maybe
Absolutely.
it's not having 4 coffees today like I've had.
I've had too.
I love it, though. I love it. I'm honestly
Well, and
feeling
I
great.
think I had to catch myself of, like, really being triggered. I was like,
Yeah.
wait, why am I triggered? I was like, are you kidding me? Like, that was my first reaction. I didn't say that out loud, but I had to catch myself and be like, well, why did that trigger me? Well,
Yep.
because I didn't have that. I didn't have that opportunity. And I do think we need to be tough and resilient. And I do think the younger generation needs to toughen up a little bit. But it's so funny. I don't know if y'all watch, is it the School of Hard Knocks, where he interviews, like, millionaires? Do you know, Javier, when he...
School of Greatness?
Is it School of Greatness?
Who is
Something Hard
is
Knocks.
it Lewis?
He
What's he look like?
he goes,
Something
he'll like,
different.
excuse me, sir, how much money do you make?
Oh, the guy in the street.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he
What
goes
did you
up
do?
to, like, all these
yeah,
millionaires
he's really
and
good.
stuff like
Yeah.
that.
He started doing YouTube. I didn't realize that.
I have a Facebook badge as being one of their top fans, so shout out. But it's because I binge watch millionaires. Like, I want to know the mindset of millionaires. But it's funny because he always asks the, like, Gen X, baby boomer generation, he goes, who do you think works harder, Gen Z or your generation? They all say we work harder and blah, blah, blah. And that triggers me too, because I'm sitting there looking at this Gen Z kid, interviewing them, who has built $1 million business.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't think that they worked harder. It's just a different type of work.
Yep.
And so I think the older generation needs to realize it's not that the younger generation doesn't work as hard. They are just working differently and more efficiently, but like it is harder now sometimes to be heard and seen in that digital space, because I feel bad for him every time he asks that question. They're like, oh, us, hands down, we worked harder. No, you just work differently, because editing videos, sitting there for hours, it can be tedious and hard and mentally draining.
Yeah. Well, I think part of that too is it's a different type of hard. Right? I was watching this Denzel thing. He was actually talking about this the other day. But like what that gentleman says, like, oh, well, we have it harder. It's like, well, because you didn't have access to YouTube, and like for us to learn things is a lot easier, right? So we can accelerate whatever we're doing a lot faster. But also, boomers didn't have the constant feedback that you get from all of these sides. You're getting everybody's opinion, and you're trying to sift through that. And I think that's where they don't understand, is like that is hard in itself. For to post a video and then people rip you apart and then go post another video, right? That is hard. And if people don't understand that, then they need to just go post some videos and understand that. But I think both of them are hard. It just depends what was the hard, right? And we get the luck of kind of being in the middle, I guess. I don't know if that's good or bad. You know, we knew it was like without YouTube and having to learn stuff and like find that one person that could help you, rather than going on YouTube and going, how to do this.
Right.
Right. So I think it's with sports too. Like I watch a lot of basketball. Whenever you ask a basketball player, whatever generation, well, which one was the toughest generation? Oh, my generation. It's like, well, you didn't play in the other ones too.
Right.
So it's also understanding that too. So
I think it's cool. Millennials get hated on. I think you're right. We are in such a cool spot right now because of what we did grow up with. I really feel fortunate to be a millennial right now, because I like the space that I'm in, where I'm getting to educate some of the older generation and the younger generation. But also, I used to be a casino travel host, and the older generation, I really learned a lot from them. I mean, when I worked there at the casinos, it was average age demographic of like 85. And again, kind of like asking them how they made their money, why they're wasting their money. Not wasting, it can be fun.
Subjective.
But they're still my client, so yes, go gamble. Follow My Casino Travel on Instagram. You will see me do their Paradise TVs weekly. Anyway, I loved interviewing those people and just being able to learn how they grew businesses and how they had that wealth to be able to travel. Because a lot of them, we were working with a lot of high rollers who had built wealth where they could go gamble and buy $400 bottles of wine. And I loved getting the perks of that. But at the same time, I realized I didn't want to work there to just do that. I wanted to figure out how to make my own wealth so then I could travel and live some of those lifestyles that they had, because it was really interesting to me, that generational knowledge. And I heard a quote the other day or something on TikTok, Instagram, somewhere, said the reason we're so scared to get old is because how we treat old people. And I was like, ooh, I really started thinking about that. And I was like, sometimes, and I've seen it so much where we just, we just don't listen to them. We don't really give them the credit. And sometimes we just don't treat them like they understand what's going on. And we get impatient with them. And I do feel like that was something that I learned working in that casino industry, was being really patient, walking people through how to check their airline tickets on a phone. Because I cared so much about educating them, because I always say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I thought to myself, when I am 85 years old, I want somebody younger than me to be patient with me, to teach me, because I want to learn. And the majority of them do want to learn, which is really cool. And so I think we just have to take that into consideration. These younger kids right now, I think they get shit on a little bit from some of the older generations of saying, well, y'all just have it so easy. Y'all just have it so easy. And like I said earlier, they're not growing up with social media and they're not growing up with that. But my 9-year-old nephew is in a computer coding class at 9. That's what they're teaching them. and he's learning to fly drones. And so what's cool to them, these technology courses and classes are only going to be that much bigger and more important. And 20 years from now, they are going to be teaching us so much stuff. So be nice to them now, because they're going to be teaching us.
Yeah, you're not wrong there.
Yeah. Kind of wrapping up here, Stetson. We have kind of a couple questions that we've added. What's one thing, we obviously talked about social media, content, podcasts, went a couple different ways, mental wellness, which is great. What's one thing right now that you're working on that you're excited about that maybe people don't know about?
Finding my husband. But I met him, Luke Keekley. Just kidding. He probably has a girlfriend. I have no idea. Right now, what I am working on is thinking of 70-year-old Stetson. What will she thank 40-year-old Stetson for? And I'm doing that even when I'm on the treadmill, like running, and I don't want to work out. And I am just picturing 70 to 75-year-old Stetson. What can I do now to help? And whether that's in business, whether that's working out, whether that's the food choices that I'm eating, who I'm dating, and being very intentional this time with who I'm dating and who I get in a relationship with. Boundaries, because I want 70-year-old version of me to be really healthy, really happy, and to be very proud of what 40-year-old Stetson did. And so that is my focus in everything that I'm doing, wrapping it up for this year.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
With that said, if you were going to give a recommendation of like a book, a podcast, a TED Talk, like what would you, not even just based on our talk, but like you think would hit with people that they should really kind of watch or listen to or read?
You know what? I'm going to give my girl Mara a shout out here because she has probably helped me the most this year in regulating my nervous system. She's my client who's the relationship coach. And then I've worked with her just through attachment theory. So she works a lot with attachment style theories. And I didn't really know much about that before. I talked about it some in therapy. But Mara's, just even doing her social media has helped me move the needle more in those dopamine detoxes, realizing some of my patterns. And I have seen more people now that I'm more aware of it that need it. They need to regulate their nervous system. And so whether you work with Mara or you just learn more about it on your own, but I will say there's so much bad content out there. Kind of, we were talking earlier about coaches that shouldn't be coaches. Mara is somebody who does know a lot about this subject. And she's just helped me learn how to deal and manage with things and not get my nervous system so wrought up, but because that's what we've been programmed to do. So there's lots of books out there about it. There's lots of videos out there about it. And there are lots of coaches out there about it. But that's what I would say. Like, I see people that I'm like, ooh, you need this now. And that was just something I never would have thought about before. And I see myself even 1 year ago. I'm like, wow, I've grown so much within a year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Sometimes just being oblivious can be good, but also can be bad.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're self-aware on a lot more things this year.
So much more.
Very intentional.
Yeah.
So much more. I've also lost 42 pounds just because of it.
Congratulations.
Let's go back and look at that first podcast we did and now this one. We still have goals to go, but it's funny because I didn't really change too much, but it's more of regulating that nervous system and dopamine detoxes. Sugar was a dopamine detox.
Yeah. What's for 2025, because we've talked a lot about this, like plans and goals and not having goals and stuff. I don't know if you've thought about this. I always like to do this, like come up with like one statement or one word that kind of I kind of think about throughout the years. There's something that's kind of resonated with you to think about throughout 2025. Like mine is discipline because I need more of that in my life. So I'm like hone in on that. So when I kind of get off track, all right, discipline is kind of where I'm just going to keep like a mantra almost. Like, do you have anything like that you?
I do. I always pick a word, and I know my word for this year already. And kind of goes back to talking about sports and growing up. My dad used to talk to us a lot about self-control growing up because in sports you have to sacrifice a lot. If you want to lose weight, you have to sacrifice sugar. If you want to grow on social media, you might have to sacrifice some other things that you do to spend time on it. So my word this year is sacrifice. And what can I sacrifice to get to the goals where I want to be? For that 70-year-old version of me, like, let me sacrifice now while I'm not married and don't have kids. It's the perfect time. And I do consider my singleness a blessing right now. Where before in the past, I would be so like, oh my gosh, I'm not married, I don't have kids. And I would focus so much on what I didn't have instead of focusing on what I do have. Same with my membership. This year was a horrible year for my business. I'm not going to lie about it. It was awful. 2023 sucked, and I hope it never happens again. I hope we only grow from it, but I know as an entrepreneur, it's going to suck again.
Yeah.
We're going to have a really bad year again, but it's probably not going to be as bad as 2023 because we're going to grow. Sorry, 2024. We're going to grow and then hit dips again. And that's just the name of entrepreneurship and business in general. So sacrifice for me is, what can I sacrifice now to help my future self? And I think that does go with it. I think sacrifice and future. Those are my kind of go together peanut butter and jelly words.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Sweet. Love it.
Yeah.
And then, just wrapping up, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Don't just listen to me on the podcast. I'm kidding.
Listen to the podcast, reach out.
I'm
Don't
just
DM her.
kidding. I am kidding. I would love for you to join the membership. So the membership is the Socially Growing membership. My website is sociallystetson.com. So a lot of my resources, contact information is on the website. So that would be the best place to go.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming on, Stetson.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks, Javier, with great hair.
Oh, that was cool. I saw how he did that.
You like that?
What'd you do?